let us explore the relationship of the Nagas, Purus, and Yadus, because a question may arise that the Nagas, when the Purus or the Yadus were all in conflict, and it is not fitting with the concept of Naga, Puru, Yadu based ethnicity of the IBC culture. Again, we may find a revival of AIT theories and such conflict theories, where one tribe fighting with another tribe and resulting in the destruction of the Harappan city. So, in order to avoid that, I have studied the entire relationship of all these ethnicities. So, you find kinship, alliance, and of course internal rivalry and hostility. So, when you say kinship, for example, Nahusha was the Naga ancestor of the Yadus and Purus. Bhima's maternal grandfather was a Naga. Arjuna's wife Ulupi was a Naga. And the sage Astika mentioned along in connection with Janameja, his mother was a Naga. Then Balarama is often mentioned as a Naga. Then you have alliances, like for example, the Nagas allied with the Purus against the Anavas, based on the analysis of Vendidat, where it mentioned about a chief called Asidahaka or Ahidashaka or Naga, and they allied with the Devas and fought against the Anavas at Kurukshetra or Varena, which is mentioned in Vendidat. Then there is a Takshaka Indra alliance against Arjuna, which is again an indication of how these alliances can change depending upon context. You have internal rivalry as well. For example, Naga Suparna sibling rivalry mentioned in the Puranas are example of internal Naga rivalry between the subsets of Nagas. And you have a hostility, like for example, battle of Arjuna with Naga Takshaka at Khandava, murder of Parikshit by Takshaka, murder of Nagas by Janameja, Yada Nagava conflict in Yamuna, which is described in Krishna's stories related to Krishna. So it is the kind of a composite culture which, like anywhere, when people coexist, you have kinships, alliances, and hostility. So I have described this to tell that people should not highlight the hostility alone and get into some wrong conclusions. Now I have put up a slide on this Dwarka and Manu's flood, which is actually part of another research, but I just put it to describe about the bathymetric studies which has been done in the Dwarka region. So from Mahabharata itself, we get to know that Dwarka was formerly known as Kushasthali, and this Dwarka Kushasthali island, the region has submerged and re-emerged not just once but more than 3 times. At least 4 times, 3 times it is mentioned clearly in Mahabharata, that is, it has submerged and re-emerged. So when archaeologists try to find out and date the excavated Dwarka, they have to consider this particular fact as well. So I have also put some points. So for example, last glacial maximum (LGM) was at 24,500 BC, and sea level maximum was achieved at 19,000 BC, and deglaciation in Arctic, which has occurred in 17,000 BC, and in Antarctic at 12,000 BC. So you comes to a point, like for example the 12,500 BC time period, where the domestication of various types of plants and animals evolved worldwide in this period, and this can be identified as the start of Rita Yuga based on the Markandeya Yuga definition, which is found in the third book and 197th chapter of Mahabharata. So according to this, Rita Yuga is 4,800 years, Treta is 3,600, Dwapara is 2,400, and Kali is 1,200 years. The total of 12,000 long Chatur Yuga. And one ascending yuga plus one descending Chatur Yuga, Yugas, it becomes close to 24,000 years, and which is approximately the period of precession of equinox, and with its current value of 25,772 years. And the traditional value also is there for it, which is 360 multiplied by 72, which is 25,920 years. And this is codified in the Rigvedic hymn about Kala Chakra, which is found in the book 164 hymn in stanzas 2, 3, 5, 11 and 48. There is an abrupt rise of sea level which is recorded at 12,000 BC, which is also recorded at 10,000 BC and 8,000 BC based on bathymetry and geological studies. The coastal region of Indian Peninsula submerged into the sea in these periods. Landmass from Gujarat to Kerala and from Bengal to Lanka submerged gradually in this period. So the migration into inland areas like Kerala and then Pandya in southern Tamil Nadu, which is described in the Tamil text, and then there is like the Manu, who is mentioned as a king of the Dravidas. He is mentioned as the king of the Dravidas in the Sanskrit text. Manu is also mentioned as escaping flood and bringing his people from the flooded lands, reaching up to the Himalayas. So this can be correlated with the 1000 BC settlements in Mehragarh, and then there is a Birana settlement in Haryana, which is also somewhat 7500 BC. So all of this can be connected, and if you combine all these things, you get that there was a population migration from the coastal region to regions to the foothills of Himalayas, which is the basis of the Vedic, Puranic, and Itihasic episode of Manu's flood. Now I have made an attempt of correlating the Markandeya Yugas with the archaeology. So this slide is about that. So based on my starting point of Rita Yuga at 12,500 BC, a descending Rita Yuga, you had a Treda starting at 7,700 BC, Dwapara at 4,100 BC, Kali Yuga at 1,700 BC. And you have an ascending Kali Yuga starting at 500 BC and Dwapara Yuga ascending at 700 CE, which is the current Yuga. So you can see that you have some kind of a correlation with what you can see in literature as well as with the archaeology. So, for example, the entire Rita Yuga period starting at 12,500 BC has to be considered as the time period of floods, because we know 12,500 BC there was a flood, 10,000 BC, 8,000 BC there were floods. So you can connect it with the Manu's flood in coastal India, especially the 8,000 BC flood. And you have these settlements like Birana, which is dated at 7,570 BC, then Mithatal at 7,500 BC, Mehragarh at 7,000 BC. All of this falls into the Treta Yuga. And Rakhi Garhi, which is 4,600 BC, and the early Harappan 3,300 BC to 2,600 BC, the mature Harappan at 2,600 BC to 1,900 BC. All of this will be falling in the Dwaraka region. So Treta region is some kind of a village settlement kind of a period. Dwapara is something like a city life kind of a period. And then you have the Kurukshetra war dating at, if you go with Sarau's assumptions of 1900 BC to 1700 BC, it matches almost well with the end of Dwapara Yuga era. And even you can also even correlate the Kali Yuga, which is starting at 1700 BC, to the late Harappan 5 culture, which is 1700 BC to 1300 BC period. And 500 BC starting of the Kali Yuga ascending is something like well documented Indian history begins at 500 BC, so it correlates with that. And now the only problem is that we have to assume that currently we are living in an ascending Dwapara Yuga started at 700 CE. Which is contrary to the popular belief that we are living in a Kali Yuga. So my proposal is that irrespective of the correlation accuracy, we can consider this Markandeya Yuga system with the 12,000 year length duration. It is very well suitable for describing the events happened in the Holocene period, which is starting something 12,500 BC. So it's a very good chronological time frame to connect all the geological and geographical events happening in this Holocene period. So that is my proposal. In this slide, what I am attempting is reconciling the traditional dates and the archaeoastronomy. So the problem is faced when you are dating Rama. So the archaeology is inconclusive due to difficulty in excavating the densely populated sites in Uttar Pradesh. And but we have a lot of data points based on bathymetry and geology. So Lanka is not an island. It was not an island before 5500 BC, and Lanka was became an island post 5200 BC after a breakup from Indian mainland. And archaeoastronomy date for Rama's birth is at 5114 BC. So there is a correlation between this bathymetry as well as archaeoastronomy here at Rama's birth at 5114 BC. It could be a sky observation data recorded by linking it with the birth of the prominent hero, that is Rama. And there is a possibility of travel narratives of a sky watcher traveling to Lanka transposed to the hero. And for this is useful for the oral transmission and memory of this astronomical and geographical data. So there is a possibility. Or otherwise, Rama actually was born in 5114 BC, and his life was in a kind of village environment with not much of cities and chariot warfare. But as the story of Rama evolved, the later redactors added those embellishments, mention of chariots and city life into Ramayana. So that can be another assumption. And when you are talking about dating of Kali Yuga at 3102 BC, it also has to be explained away as a sky observation of the there is a prominent astronomical conjunction occurred at that period. So to memorize that, it can be linked with the prominent hero Krishna, who was born in 1900 BC, but associated with particular this 3102 BC date. That is a possibility. Otherwise, we have to go with the Achar's dating of 3139 BC, and then there are no conflicts. Then other consideration we have to take, we have to consider are for example the oldest possible date of chariot warfare. It will be limited to 2500 BC, and Proto-Indo-European evolved by 4000 BC based on some conservative estimate, though the evolution is possible at 5500 BC, or very rarely to 7500 BC as well. But popularly it is considered as 4000 BC as the date of evolution of Proto-Indo-European. And the archaeoastronomy gives, besides this 3100 BC, another date of 1597 BC for the planetary conjunction. So there is two solutions for the equations. Even the scholars are having some questions. How can someone hailed as an incarnation who has done miracles be ever historical? Krishna's personality as a childhood and that at his prime is very different. Are they two different individuals fused together? What is the period in history where Krishna lived? 3139 BC or 1700 BC or any other date? Who is Radha? Does she exist?